Welcome to the Concentric Justice podcast. I'm really delighted to be here with you, Monica. And to introduce you, I'll read this biography. Monica is a research scientist renowned for her pioneering work in plant communication, cognition, and subjectivity. Recognized as one of the biohabitat's 24 most inspiring women of ecology alongside Jane Goodall and Rachel Carson, her research challenges conventional boundaries of intelligence and inspires new ways of relating to the natural world. Monica's contributions include numerous influential scientific papers and books, including Thus Spoke the Plant and The Mind of Plants. She is a research associate professor in evolutionary ecology in Australia and a free-roaming explorer bridging Western and Indigenous science to develop innovative approaches to planetary challenges. Is there anything you would like to add to that was missed?
I guess the only thing is adjunct. I don't know. I don't have a position in the university. I have left academia 2 years ago now, officially. So I'm still kind of affiliated, but only because I have an email and access to library.
Okay.
And I think that's important because it was a conscious decision to leave.
Okay.
And it is probably also part of the same conversation that we are having here.
Yeah. So let's get into that directly, just like, your background and this shift you've made from academia to being a scientist in your own way.
That's right, whatever that is.
Would you like to?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. It's I've been in academia for over 20 years as a researcher, and more if I count my training. So I left officially 2 years ago because I realized that the questions that we really need to explore, ask of ourselves, are not really possible within the academic boundaries. Not because academia can't do it, because it won't. It won't do it. It's too dangerous to go there. But it's very dangerous not to. The way in which the world is at the moment, our planetary situation, it's demanding, at least I feel for myself, is demanding of myself everything that I have to offer. And I don't think I can offer everything I have inside that box. So I left, but of course that what I left is the institution rather than the science or the scientist, because the scientist, it was always here since I was a child. So that one is I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to learn the methods. I know how that game works. I know what the rules are, and I can decide to play them. I think it's still an important space. It's just that I feel a great urgency right now to do what I can. Because I just don't know how much time we have. My feeling is that there is not much time in that sense. Yeah, so it's an interesting question when people ask me, like, so what do you do now? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to survive without a job. And in the meantime, I'm having an amazing time, doing what my life is asking of me. And some of the things are a bit strange, but at least I don't have to justify with anyone. And I don't know if it is, they say that when you get around 50, you really don't care anymore what people think of you. Well, I'm approaching. It's like, maybe that's what it is. It's like, do you know what? I don't care what you think of me. You can criticize, you can patronize, you can even, insult me, because I have plenty of that too. And really, go ahead. I'm doing something else and I don't need your approval. And I think maybe, at least for me, this is being very useful because at the very least, academia would never approve of what I'm doing at the moment with my work.
Okay, I'm very curious what it is you're doing at the moment, and it's quite inspiring to hear you, claim your freedom as a sovereign scientist in the direction that you feel is true for you. But before I ask about that, I'd also love to hear about your experience in going from marine biology to researching plant consciousness, because it seems to me that was quite an important shift also in your academic career, where you had to put your foot down to some of the trainings you'd previously had. So would you be willing to share about that?
Yeah, of course. I'm actually revisiting a lot of those moments in my life because I'm trying to write a book and to realize that those moments are not just one moment. There are multiple moments occurring over and over again if you're lucky. And I think I've been very lucky that they have been occurring a lot, and they're very disruptive because, yeah, they demand that you change, and sometimes radically. Like for me, when I was a marine scientist, I've always wanted to be a marine scientist. I wanted to become one since I was a child, and I didn't care about plants at all, or so I thought. And then, as you mentioned, like arriving to a place within my research, I just completed my doctorate, and I was doing my first fellowship, and uh, lots of time in the water in the field doing my field work. And yeah, and I had a very deep, I would say it's a mystical experience, but it doesn't have to be called that. But it was an experience that certainly transformed this into something else, because yeah, the experience basically was with the fish that I was working with. And these animals are wild animals, and what they taught me was that I was just going in their home, in their territory, in the reefs where they lived and did their business, as if I had the right, and as if they were like just there for my observation, for my pleasure, for my use. And at the very end, when the use that I needed for them because of my, permits and protocols and of science, they clearly demanded that I wake up to myself. And the animals there for months were very friendly, or they have become very comfortable with my presence in their space. Were not comfortable at all on that last day when they knew that I was gonna go and collect them and kill them all, which I did. And it was part of my learning, but it was also the last time I did, and that also demanded that I would not do it again and change my science. And there those moments when you are forced to change, like we are now, planetary wise, unless we had some practice and unless we had been cultivating a posture of or an attitude that enable us to let go into change, to lean into change instead of like, no, please, then it's really hard. And I think this is what we are experiencing now. We're just having a really hard time to let go of a world that is no longer viable, is no longer what is needed. Maybe it was never needed, but certainly it taught us plenty of lessons. And now it's time to change. And for me, the change also signified, well, maybe that's it. That's the end. That's the end of the scientist. And I think many people think that this is also the end of the world, because change does feel like the end of the world. And it is the end of a world, a version of the world as we knew it. We can call it the status quo, we can call it the institution, we can call it whatever, but it is the end of what you know, because something new is coming. And how exciting is that? But somehow we don't feel the excitement. We just feel the fear of like, I'm just as uncomfortable I am in the position that I am right now. I rather this than the potential of extreme pleasure and joy with the new. But I don't know what that is, therefore I don't want it. Yeah, so if we were able to relax into our change, then we would make our life much easier. I didn't relax in my change when it happened with the fish, for example. And it was a tragedy until slowly, I realized, oh, I thought this was a closure. Instead, it was a door, actually two doors, because so many things happened and opened. And of course, the plant came into my life to remind me that they always have been, to remind me that we already were in relations, even if I forgot. In that remembering, yeah, I discovered actually this is going to be fun. And instead of being a tragedy, it became like almost a comedy, because there were plenty of comic moments after that. But you can't laugh about it until you've gone through that birth. And these kind of moments have happened to me again and again. So me leaving academia this time, it wasn't like kicking and screaming. It was like, oh, okay, it changes upon me again. And this time I'm going to lean right into it instead of like pulling away. And so it's still, challenging, but well, first of all, you feel you can move with a little bit more grace, which is always nice. And also I think you avoid a lot of stress for yourself, because you can understand clearly that what's happening is for your own good. It's not some godly punishment that, because you've been a bad girl or bad boy. That's also part of our conditioning. It's just what life needs to do, and it will do it for the good of the whole, but we are not very good at seeing that either. So we are very self-centered, so it's very difficult to understand that. So at the moment, for example, my situation is officially I have no job, but I'm working as hard as ever, if not more. I have no job, I have no income, I have no home, I have no car, I have a few bits of clothing that are in a box, and so from the outside you would think like, oh my god, this is total disaster zone, and it isn't. It's well, one can judge it that way, but it's I am totally in service of what life is asking me to do. And for some reason, in some ways, I've been able now, it's 2 years, I've still been able to somehow have a home somewhere to go to because someone was going on holiday. Monica, can you look after my house while I'm in Europe? Sure. Monica, I'm going to be away. Can you look after my dog and stay at my home while I'm on my way? You can use my car as well. And I've been traveling a lot, probably more than ever. And all of it is being supported. So how do we explain that?
Well, I don't think we can.
Exactly.
Yeah, it just seems to me that this process of change that you're talking about um, kind of requires to dive into the unknown, which is really scary and requires a lot of courage. And that's not really how we're trained to live our lives. We're trained to be able to predict things, control outcomes. We need to make sure that we have a retirement plan and everything else. So I'm curious, like, how does it feel for you? Is there an element of fear, or do you feel like completely trusting of the unknown?
Well, there is no trust without fear. Otherwise, it wouldn't be trust. It would be like, I know this. You need to be a little scared. I became a marine biologist and I was totally terrified of the ocean. I learned to swim by my dad throwing me in deep water and me almost drowning. I don't say that that's the best way to teach people to swim, how to swim, but sometimes this is the best way to do it. Just like, well, here it is. You wanna know this, you wanna explore this, you wanna become something different, then jump. And of course that requires trust, and trust is there for those who are prepared to go beyond their own fear. It's not that there is no fear. The fear is there, of course, because you don't know what you're jumping into. And it's like, will I land somewhere? Like, of course, it's natural. And it's good because fear sometimes can protect us as well from doing stupid things. But then there is that cultivating that is almost like an instrument inside, right? That is allowing you to have very clear discernment on when is the time to trust deeply despite your fear, and when your fear is actually signaling this is not the direction. But they have two different flavors. And I think that once you do it a few times, you recognize the flavor. And if you're honest enough with yourself, you know when you are using your fear to make excuses not to do something. And also when, despite your fear, you might look like a mad person from the outside to the other people, but and that's the trust talking, when you're like, I know I gotta do this no matter what. And so I'm gonna step in and let's hope for the best. And as you said, you then feel so supported because life was calling you, not because your ego was telling you what to do.
It seems like in this day and age, with so much tension in the world, you can, when following that calling, for me at least, there's been a lot of hearing like, oh, you're becoming so radical. And in a sense, it's kind of like, well, how could we not be?
Exactly.
And like, are we really, really trying to continue with this status quo? Are we still going to insist on doing things the same way? Like, can you not see where we are? So I guess it's insanity.
What a compliment, really. Radical. It's, you're so radical. Yes, you're so rooted into life, and you're committed to be rooted and, radicated into life and what life is asking, instead of some fiction, which is what we have created. And that's why it doesn't work. Because in the end, life is going to always take us where we need to go, not where we think we need to go. And I think that most people arrive at the end of their lives unhappy just because they never actually listen to that voice. So having the opportunity to fine tune that instrument and follow that voice, what an opportunity, what an honor. Aren't we here for that? And to be able to get to the end of your life, whenever that is, and feel like, yeah, but wow, I had a wild ride and it was fantastic. Now I'm ready to go. Instead of like, I wish I did more of that or this. No, I mean, if I had to go now, I'm happy to stay, of course, but it's like if I had to go now, I'm so happy with everything that I've done up to this point. So,
Yeah.
and in many tradition, life is a practice for dying. So, which is another change.
Yeah. And like you said, in a way, if we're open to life, we're kind of dying all the time. New versions of
Mhm.
ourselves are coming out all the time.
And we get good at it. That's the thing. That's the thing. It's a practice. So the first time you go kicking and screaming, as I did when they told me like no more marine science, now this way. And I went down kicking and screaming. It was very ungraceful. And then, next time around, it was like, oh, but I'm not ready yet for changes. Like, yeah, well, we decided that you are. And it was, of course, it was exactly what was perfectly on the timeline, even if I didn't know at the time. And then this time, I feel is the first time in my life when I was able to like, oh, I can sniff. There is smell of change. Okay, I'm ready. I'm gonna co-create with this instead of being taken for a ride because one way or another it's happening. So it might as well like be part of the co-creation team instead of being taken and feel like you are you don't have a say. It's not control. It's just a say. It's like, what is it that you would like to do? What is it that you would like to be? How would you like to serve this moment?
So let's back up and talk about the first time you went kicking and screaming. Like how did that transition happen for you when you decided to leave marine biology? How did the plants approach you?
Well, I didn't decide to leave marine biology. That's why I was kicking and screaming. It's like I didn't want to. And I tried to do my science differently. But it became very clear that, it was going to run out pretty soon. And so I really actually believed at one point this is the end of my career. I just started it and it's already finishing. How brilliant. And then I was working on the east coast of Australia where the Great Barrier Reef is, and I moved to the west coast for a fellowship. And the fellowship actually was still on marine work, on fish and aging in fish. And then I couldn't do it because I couldn't work in that space anymore. So it was like, what do I do? Do I tell them that I can't do it, return the fellowship and go and do something else? Or do I just see what happens? Because we started this new garden, and it was because of this garden and this connection with the earth and this literally putting your fingers in the earth that I think it kind of I became radical. And he allowed me to connect with other more than humans, in this case with the plants. And it became very clear, it's like, hey, we can work with you. You don't have to disappear. We'll teach you. It's like, but I don't know anything about plants. Don't worry, we'll teach you. And so it was an animal scientist doing experiments with plants, like if they were animals, but they were not, and entering an area of academia, which is in a way quite different from the animal ecology side because they are different people. And I think that, some felt very threatened that someone that wasn't belonging there would do things that were so radical, apparently, and would ask questions that I shouldn't be asking. But that's exactly what you do when you go radical, in the sense of like you connect with the earth, that you ask the question that they need to be asked. And so, I started doing experiments that were very simple. In my little garden in my new home, I had planted some basil, chilies, and plants like this. So those are the people that I started collaborating with. And the first experiments that I did were with chilies and basil and fennel plants. simply because they were the closest one in my garden, and they turned up to be very exciting because, of course, they opened up more and more questions. And because I was coming from outside the specific specialized field, I wasn't a botanist or plant physiologist. For me, I didn't have a problem about asking certain questions that if I was in the animal field, it would be like a normal question. And that, in a way, which looked like was my vulnerability, is like, well, you're not prepared for these areas. You don't know about this. It was exactly my not knowing that allowed me to do like a child, right? Not naive, but childlike, asking questions that are like, but why is this like this? Or what is that? And that's how my plant science, or my science with plants, came about, really. And then, of course, then you start getting excited about it and you go wild and you ask further and further wild questions, which is, I guess, what I did. They didn't feel so wild to me, but that was what I perceived from how they were received by others.
And what was the first kind of insight or experience you had that really shook you to your core, or, with your work with plants?
I had so many. It's a constant. That even now, I keep going. And so I wouldn't even be able to pinpoint one because there are so many. And it's good that it's that way, because this relating is not something that happens on on the perfect day when the light is shining through and making rainbows. No, it's absolutely ordinary. It happens every day if you're open to it. It's everywhere. It happens for everyone that wants to. You just need to be humans. I think that qualify most of us. So yeah, and so in that sense, it's good that I wouldn't know how to answer the question of like, oh, this one insight, because yeah, it's not that special. It's not like one in that moment that was like magical. No, it's a continuous series of magical moments happening, and too
Is
many.
is there a story you could share that might be inspiring for someone that's new to this, or exploring how we can relate to plants in other ways than we are usually trained to?
Well, I guess the first thing to say is that, and this is a concept that has been around since the 80s, and now it found a bit of a revival, and is the concept of plant blindness, because we don't see plants as living entities. We see them as pretty, maybe, or not. When they flower, they catch our attention, but in most situations, they're just like the backdrop. They are the environment, the other thing that is around us. So I guess that the first thing would be to spend some more time, like literally paying attention and trying to change your eyes, like when you're looking at a tree or a little grass, try to see that this is not a thing, is a someone. And as a little exercise that, again, anybody can do. You can do it even with a dandelion trying to crack through the concrete in the middle of New York. So,
What do you mean by
and
someone? That it's a
yeah, it's not a thing. It's not an object. Someone is a person, and a person has a life, has desires, has an agenda of what he would want to do with his or her life. And of course, from a justice perspective, it's got rights to be there, to be honored, to be respected, like all life. And then I guess from there, the world is your oyster or is your forest, depend. I had, even just a few months ago, I was in a gathering, and there were some of the people in the gathering that I felt really confronting for me, because they were very controlling and kind of trying to dictate what others should be doing. And I didn't really like that much, and I didn't know what to do. So I tried to speak to it, and it didn't go very well. And so I just found like, well, I'm going to be here for another week. What am I going to do? And so I leaned against a tree, and I asked, it's like, any suggestions about this? And I just leaned and I just, waited. And the message that arrived in my head was very simple. And it was so simple that it made me laugh, because I should have got this. I should have thought of this myself, but I was so caught up in my situation. And it was just like, take a step back, take a step. back. You don't need to speak to any of these. You don't need to engage with any of these. You can take a step back and then see which parts require you and which one don't. You don't have to engage with all of it. And so I did that. So I consciously went back into the group, and whenever there was like something in the conversation or something that was said that would have normally like, God, that not again. I was like, okay, I'm taking a step back. This is what they're saying. It doesn't mean that I'm not obliged. I'm not, like I'm just going to see. And what happened was that, yeah, it transformed the entire dynamics, at least for me. And I was able to stay for the entire week, totally comfortable. And not only that, but then they took step forwards towards me because they were kind of curious and like, so what about you? So then they were asking me, instead of me trying to, I don't want this. I was like, okay, you know what? I don't actually, I'm just going to lift my hands and just say that I'm here, but I'm not engaging unless it feels so for me. So that invited the engagement from the other side, which is in a way the same engagement that we can have with any other form of life, any more than human. With plants, that's what I do. It's like I take a step back, really. Leaning towards a tree is a step back. I'm saying to the tree, I'm here. That's all. If you have anything to share, I'm here. I'm available. I'm making myself available to you. I'm open and I'm listening to you if there is anything. And sometimes there is nothing. Sometimes it's just nice and that's it. Sometimes it's not nice and that's it. But it's of attention that is what matters. And that one works with the more than humans. It works with the humans. And I think it could do very well for our humanity if it was put in practice, especially at the moment.
Well,
Because
so let's
lots of things that we don't need to engage with and others that we need to. But if we try to solve everything, we just get burnt out and overwhelmed, which doesn't work very well.
So through the course of your relating to the more than human world and your exploration with plants, what have you learned about justice? Like what does justice feel like for you? And not necessarily just, what do you think justice is, a definition, but when you are relating to the plants you're working with in what feels like a good relationship, what does that feel like? And is there anything you could share, like amusing, for us to creatively explore new ways of understanding justice?
Of course, I'm not a lawyer, so I would never dare to give a definition of justice or anything. But as I was listening to you, I thought, you mentioned justice, and then you mentioned, what it feels for something to be just, but just in the sense of like that contains justice or looks like justice, but also just as it is. It is just because it just is. And so it returns to me to that posture that we were talking about before of like, can you take a step back? And that step back allows you to stop judging your circumstances because you're inevitably judging them through the lenses of what you have learned through your experiences in the past. And this is like many traditions from all over the world, spiritual tradition, indigenous tradition, they all speak the same because maybe that is something that is a kind of one of the fundamentals, I don't know, but certainly is a recurrent pattern. And so what if we were to just be, and that would allow us to be just? Because maybe being just or create a space of justice is also about allowing everyone to express themselves without judgment. And it's funny that the justice system is a system of judgment because I need to judge you and decide whether you need to be penalized or not for something that you did. And of course, there are some things that we all, I suppose, agree that they are fundamentally unjust because they impinge on other people, not just humans, ability to be themselves, whether it's to be alive, if we're talking about murder, but also to be themselves. Anything that impinge on the expression of life, it's not just. And of course, life is paradoxical, so it would always put another little spin on it. And it would say, if I was to listen to it, I think it would say to me, yeah, but remember that this place finds justice in duality. Justice as well is the symbol of this, balancing act between two judgments, two positions. So again, it's like, if you are too extreme on one side and if you get attached to one side, the other side inevitably needs to present itself so that it can bring balance, which is the justice from a bigger perspective. So maybe the invitation would be not to be extreme on either side. You're not trying to become, and nothing wrong with being a monk in a monastery in the middle of in the top of a mountain. You're not trying to become that, and maybe you're not trying to become a murderer, the two extremes on the two sides. But most of us actually don't live there. Most of us live precisely in the middle. So maybe we are already in the place of justice. It's just that we haven't realized that that's the case. And if we stop judging the extremes as if everyone is moving towards those extremes while most of us actually live in the middle already, maybe we'll discover that we can be more just than we think. The justice is already here even before we can enact it or play with it. Because if you imagine being in the middle, for example, would mean, let's take racism as one of the many. Well, if you're in the middle and you're not judging, I don't care what color is your skin or where you come from. And it's like, it really doesn't matter to me. So I'm just relating to you as, oh, you're a human being, I'm a human being. Great. And the moment I start like, yeah, but your skin is this color and my skin is that color, then I'm starting moving away from this middle and starting to polarize. I mean, our world right now is an extreme polarization. That's why there is no justice. So justice is there, but it's stuck in the middle, and we are trying to move to the extremes instead of moving inwards. And but I don't really know anything about justice. So,
Yeah, I mean, in one sense, like when we think about justice, we think about these systems and lawyers and I don't know, parliament or whatever. But for me, it's like, and it's funny that you mentioned the word balance because in Arabic, which is my mother tongue, the word for justice and balance is the same. It's
uh-huh.
and so for me, when I heard your story about, having to say, no, I won't kill for my science, to me, that was kind of like an expression of justice in a way of realizing like I'm not living in right relation to these fish when I need to take their life in order to do my
Exactly.
science. The science isn't coming from this place of justice. So I think when people say they don't know anything about justice, it's kind of like we're giving away our power to these systems that we are in. So for me, it's really interesting to hear someone like you that's been exploring plant consciousness. Like, how has your coming into right relationship with the plants enabled both your own flourishing, but also the flourishing of the plant to be seen and, received by us?
Yeah, thank you for your comment on your reflection on the fish, because it is all about being in right relationship and balance. And I think we need to. I think we have forgotten how to use our discernment, as we were talking about before, and we can't recognize anymore what it is that can bring that balance or can bring that right relationship. And so as a scientist, it's like, well, the right thing to do is to collect your data. Otherwise, you're not being the right scientist. But if a science demands me to collect my data, for collecting my data, I mean, it demands me to kill someone else's on the name of those numbers, then is the science that is wrong. Then is the science that is out of balance, not the fish in this case. So with the plants, it's been an interesting journey because I think that they're way much smarter than we are. And so every so often I get like kind of like, not like that. They're like, "Oh, sorry." And so it's a constant learning. And that's the thing, is like, it's not like all relationships, if we think about it, it's not like once you are in relationship and it's a good relationship, that relationship is going to stay good because it's intrinsically good like that. Changes all the time. And it means that you need to put yourself always, you need to lean into it always, and always look again and again and find again and again that place of honoring the other, being in right relationship. It's not something that just exists. It's something that you actually create, you work for it, you engage with it. And in a way, the good relationship are those ones that find themselves in the middle. Again, they're not extreme. Otherwise, we know in some relationship you have codependency, in other relationship you have violence. And it's like they're both out of whack. So with the same with the plants, is like and because they are much smarter than me, at least, I don't know, they remind me all the time. It's like when I forget that I'm not in right relationship, because either I forgot to be attentive as I'm supposed to be, or whatever. And it happens all the time. But that's what relationships are. They keep reminding us to come back to the middle, to be centered and radical. And so the relationship with the plants or any other modern humans is nothing different from any other relationship. And fortunately, and I don't speak on their behalf, this is my understanding from my experiences with, with different indigenous groups from around the world and nature in general, like the plants, the animals, the mountains, the rivers. Fortunately, not all of us have forgotten. Certainly, the modern human hasn't forgotten ever, but I think also amongst the humans, not everyone has forgotten, fortunately. And I really feel that it's a blessing. And I said this before, it's truly a blessing that we still have a component of humanity that remembers and knows very clearly what just is and what being balanced and in right relationship is. And there are many keywords here, from reciprocity to honoring, and that speak to that. Basically, they are in a way enactment of that being in right relationship, or being in balance with the rest. And of course, with anything that is out of balance, we know that eventually things break down and they get composted, and then new stuff comes up. So in our world right now, our industrialized world in particular, but is impacting everyone. So yeah, it's certainly not in right relationship with the world and with itself even. It will have to break down. It's natural.
So one thing
This
that
is the change that everyone is scared of.
the thing that strikes me as really kind of almost funny is that we're still trying to think our way out of this problem. We're still trying to think our way out of our predicament as humanity. When you come with something radical as like, okay, maybe we should explore other ways of knowing, or maybe we just really need to get down on our knees and like feel the pain that we're avoiding so much and get out of our heads. And people will look at you as if you're crazy if we're not to think our way out of how we are relating to the world. And if we're not to think our way to what justice is there another approach that resonates with you in like some small steps? In which direction could we go?
Well, I think that, it's very simple. First, you just need to get out of the walls that are encasing you and separating you from the world, and go and find the real world made of earth and bones and blood, just like you, so that you realize that you're everywhere already, that there is no, that this body and all the other bodies that you see are made of the same. So honoring those bodies is also honoring you. And it's a very embodied and very visceral experience that anybody can have. And you don't need to do a course on it. You don't need to be a practitioner of anything. You don't need to be certified to do this. It's like you just go outside and touch the earth. Then if I think about the experiences that I've had, that I've been very honored and fortunate to have, especially in indigenous contexts, what I really learned is that there is a reason why humanity over the course of our history has done rituals and ceremonies and, practices that allows us to repeat over and over and over again the same action. Most of those are just to remind us exactly this, that if you've forgotten about touching the earth today, do it. And so we do these rituals to remind us that's what's important. And I think ritual, it's, and some are like ancient, some are new because it's a new time and new ritual emerge and new ways of expressing that honoring probably are one of the weapons that we have. Because when you are in ceremony, or when you are in deep prayer, or when you are, dancing and, you're not in your head. Have you ever seen anybody that can be in their heads while dancing? It's impossible if you're really dancing. And it's interesting because in reality, if you see it, over the last, I would say 20 years, but maybe a little bit more even, there has been this explosion of like ceremony, ritual, blah, blah, of every kind. The only thing that we haven't been careful enough is that the system that we have created, the unjust system that we have created, is very good at gobbling up everything that comes and emerges brand new that could threaten the system itself. So all of these ritualized, not all, but many of the new emergence of ritualized practices, ceremony, they've all become like commercialized and capitalized and become the same of the same. So they cannot work as a practice for what they are needed or were envisioned to do. And so, it's an interesting time to be here, to be alive and see this game and see how, if there is no guarantee, every birth is it could be, a death too. So there is no guarantee that humanity can make it through. There is a guarantee if we keep going as we're going. But if we are serious really about doing something else, then we just need to actually action these other ways. And if people think that you're crazy, okay. If that is the only thing that they can say, okay, you're free to think that I'm crazy. In the meantime, I'm just doing my crazy thing. Let's see. You can thank me later when, we sorted out this mess, and then you can thank me about my craziness if we make it through. Yeah. For me, ritual and the ceremonial practices have become, I think they were always important. I always collected little flowers and put them in a formation next to my fish or whatever. Unfortunately I had a fish bowl when I was little and a goldfish inside, and that was my nature at the time. But I would still like collect little flowers and put them around the bowl and do things like that. That's a ritual. It's almost like it's a child saying like, hey, isn't it pretty like this? Look, I'll make you pretty. I'll make your existence prettier, nicer, more comfortable, more beautiful. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with beauty? What's wrong with like comfortable and I'll care for you? What's wrong with care? Those are all keywords that are so cliche, of course, because they are so used, abused, and whatever. But if we stop and really think about what does it mean to care, well, we're not caring much at the moment, but we have so much potential to care. So it's actually nothing that is out of our hands. We can totally do this, but we need to decide to do it. I don't think we need certainly I don't think we need to go to some other planet to resolve the mess. Yeah. We just create another one. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. Matter. I mean, it's lovely to hear you reflect. I thought hearing you speak, what strikes me is that, people will hear a podcast like this, or they'll hear someone talking about the poly crisis, and may be moved, but to a large extent, maybe just continue for a while and then continue life as usual. And what it is that like prompts people to really lean into change, I really have no idea, although it seems like that's what's needed. But that brings me to one of the questions that I'd written down to you, and maybe we can end with this question. I heard you saying that, the experiential knowledge is, hearing someone regurgitate something and understanding it, that's all good and well. But that which maybe really can shift and change things is experiential knowledge. And I'd just love to hear you reflecting on that, because that resonated a lot with me.
I think that our current, anxiety levels are already very telling of this experiential situation. Life will always give us experiences, and until you feel so anxious that you can't do anything else but change, maybe you won't change. In the Amazon, if they say that if you want to know plants, you need to drink them. Of course, you don't have to drink all plants, but what they're saying is you need to bring them in. You need to bring that experience inside you. You and your experience are the only thing that is going to tell you the next step. So that's why, for me to tell you, Fatima, you should do this and this and this, it's like, and even if you were to do exactly what I said, sometimes it just wouldn't work for you because it wasn't you. In most cases, we need to drink our own medicine, whether it's plant or whether it's simply life providing, and yeah, and take a posture of attention. Like, what is life? Life doesn't have anything against me. Life is providing me over and over opportunities to do my next transformation. So it's like, instead of feeling like the victim of the world, that are like, oh my God, I'm so anxious. The world is such a mess. Sorry. Maybe, if we start seeing like, wow, okay, what an incredible, massive opportunity for change. And life is really insisting on this one. Because it's making it so unbearable that it's like there is no compromise on this. That's why you change or you change. So I think even just that attitude of not seeing yourself as the victim in a world that is dying, but as the opportunity to step into a new world. And how we create this new world, how we relate to this new world depends on us and everyone else that is more than human with us. But yeah, so it's actually an amazing time, despite the craziness and the abhorrent behavior that we are expressing at the moment. After so many centuries of war, we're still doing war. It feels medieval. After so many centuries of violence, we're still doing violence. That really feels prehistoric. And I don't want to insult our ancestors, but
Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful hearing you reflect, and so much of what you've said has just been like directly applicable to my own life. It's quite funny.
because we're all in it together.
So I've just learned so much by sitting here with you this hour. And I appreciate your time and
Thank you.
you
Someone said to me recently, and I've been using it as my little mantra. Someone said to me, if something, you don't need to do the things that hurt your heart. And we know, because that's where the anxiety also comes in. When you're doing things that are actually hurting your heart, you know in your heart that like, this is not right. So stop doing those things. You don't need to engage with those things. Engage with the things that make your heart sing. And again, it sounds like cliche, but let's give it a go and let's see if it works.
Thank you so much. I wish you a beautiful day. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Fatima. To the next time.
Bye.
Ciao.